Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode. You guys have been you've been tuning in, and I've been seeing the numbers climb. And I think it's because the guests that we are bringing in are not normal guests. These people are real individuals who have gone through stories that honestly I'm surprised most of them make it out of, and that's why I want to bring them to you. And I know that you've heard of this individual before. I've been on his show, fortunately been invited on his show, but most importantly because when you start to find individuals like this, they stand out. And so I know you've heard of this lovely individual, Marcus Aurelius Anderson, and obviously he's got an incredible name, so that's a great start. But he is a veteran. He is the best-selling author of The Gift of Adversity. He's a TED speaker. He's an international keynote speaker, mindset coach, CEO, entrepreneur. And he is somebody that, I mean, what else do you need? What else do you need, dude? You've got an insane story. So why don't we just start with that? How the hell did you decide that the United States Army was going to be for somebody as brilliant as you? Because you don't seem like a grunt, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me on, and thank you for being on my show as well. I loved our
Course.
connection. I love knowing you and everything you're up to, everything you're working on. I joined the light infantry at 38 years old because I went through a divorce, and my great uncle, who is my biggest male role model besides my father, when my parents were divorced, he was in long range reconnaissance patrol in Vietnam, and he passed away. So life has a way of punching you in the face and making you stop and take a look. And most of the time it happens when we don't want to, when we don't have time, and it's inconvenient. Right. And I think you understand that. So that's what happened to me. And I took a good hard look at my life. I was in chiropractic school. I talked to the school and I say, what happens if I go active? They say, well, pause your degree. I'm not married. I had no kids. I was out of fucking excuses. Right. So at 38 years old, talked to a recruiter. He says, explain to me why you want to run away and join the Army. And then he asked me if I was smart. And I was like, I'm talking to you as a recruiter at 38. Do I sound smart to you? But what he meant was, how would you do on an ASVAB placement? Right. Did pretty well and did pretty well physically. And he's like, let you in. You've got scores. You can do anything you want in the U.S. Army, whatever MOS, whatever you want to do. I was like, I want to do what my great uncle did. And he's like, well, let's send you to OCS, Officer Candidate School. I already had a degree. I was like, would that give me the best choice, the best opportunity to do what he was doing as a Green Beret, as Ranger? And he was all like, literally laughed in my face. He's like, no. I was like, what if I went enlisted? He said, you want to enter the Army as a grunt at E4 at 38 years old? And I said, would that give me the best opportunity? He says, yeah. And I was like, well, let's do it. He's like, you don't get it. You can do whatever you want in the Army. And I said, Sergeant, with all due respect, you don't get it. This is what I want. And if I don't get it, I'm walking. And 6 months later, I'm at Fort Benning getting yelled at by guys in brown hats that are really angry all the time and competing against guys half my age. But I needed that because we have to jump in all the way to commit. There's not one level of commitment, that's total. So once you're in it and you're in 4 months of infantry school and they're trying to break you off, this was back in 2011 when it was still challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, I love how you worded that.
Challenging. They were not giving you like stress cards, or they weren't telling you, I don't feel like you're loving me, Sergeant. Right. They wanted to break you. They wanted to get you out because that's the man that gets you killed in combat if you can't get through somebody yelling at you when there's no real danger. So that got me through that. Fort Drum at 10th Mountain Light Infantry, 20 miles south of the Canadian border. Get stationed there and they say, get ready to pack your trash because we're deploying soon. You're in a deployment rotation. And I thought that I was prepared from infantry school, but once you get to your unit, it's a whole other level. Those guys are like salty. They know what's going on. And about a year into the deployment rotation, in 2012, I'm preparing to deploy with them. Rupture a disc in my neck, paralyzes me from the neck down. They send me to the hospital. I die on the table twice while they're saving my life to try to remove this disc from my neck.
Wow.
And when I wake up in the ICU, they say the good news is you get to live to tell the tale. The bad news is this is what you're left with. And at that point, I was about to turn 40. Ooh. So at 40, I'm looking at my life. I'm broke, divorced, bedridden, and paralyzed, trying to figure out what the hell do I do now? And that was the beginning. That was my all is lost moment, as Stephen Pressfield would say.
Dude, it's so fascinating to see you climb out of what you have when you look at being paralyzed from the neck down. So let's talk about that. I know some individuals from the motorsports world who, they do backflips and then all of a sudden they're paralyzed and, they crash and they're paralyzed and, it's waist down, it's neck down, it's all of these things. And there's this belief that your life is over once you're paralyzed. It's this belief that you'll never get better. You can't heal from these things, which is such a negative stereotype that's perpetuated. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely, once you're paralyzed, there are people who they cannot walk again due to a severe spinal cord sever, or whether you look at something like a vaccine injury like Caleb Pollock. But
Yes.
the other thing that's pretty wild to me, though, too, is science is progressing so rapidly if you look at Neuralink and things like that. So we didn't know about that then. So how did you sit there and grapple with this reality? I mean, you didn't have a spouse, you didn't have a bunch of children that were in there keeping your spirits high. So how did you pull yourself out of this, I don't want to say negative mindset, but into a mindset that I can actually heal from this and walk again?
Yeah. Um, I'd love to tell you the hero's answer and that I was zen and stoic the whole
Mm,
time and I just believed it, but I'd be full of shit.
mm,
Um, we all go through the 5 stages of grief before we accept our reality when we face any kind of adversity. And I went through denial for a long time
mhm.
until they got me back to my unit. Because I was like, you know what? You guys told me I died on the table twice. I should be able to just fucking walk this being paralyzed thing off. I'm a soldier. This is what I do. I'm a warrior.
Right,
And man, there's what you hope happens, and then there's what happens. And how you
right.
respond to what actually happens is who you the fuck you are.
Mm,
So being in that position, I went through a lot of anger.
mhm.
And we know veterans, right? Anger that is directed inwards is the definition of depression. So I was very depressed because I was angry at all the stuff I had given up, all the stuff I thought that I was going to be able to do, all the opportunities that I had that I'd taken for granted. They say you don't know what you got till it's gone, but that's not true. We know what we have. We just assume that we will always have it.
I don't
And
think that we assume that we will always have it. I think that some people go through life assuming that. And I think that some people from a young age never assume they'll have it.
mm,
So it's a
there
really
you go.
interesting perspective because some people will never, they've never been taught that they could even have it. So to have to grapple with having it and losing it, it almost
Yeah.
feels like that's more complicated.
Yeah. It's brutal. And being in that place, you go through denial, anger, bargaining. So for bargaining,
Hmm.
you're in this place and you're like, if I say these mantras or if I pray or if I use this belief, and man, I did them all.
Hmm.
And then I eventually got to that place of just finally getting depressed and then accepting it. What I did was I let go of all expectations. I just said, listen, if God or the universe is doing this to me,
Hmm.
I'm going to just sit here and figure out what the fuck the lesson is. And whatever it is, I have to have this thing taken care of before I have any hopes of being able to recover, if that's even going to happen. So I let go of all expectations. It just said, what can I do now? You feel like a victim. Like I was suicidal. I wanted
Hmm.
nothing more in my life than death, but
Right.
I couldn't act on it because of my physicality.
Right.
So when that's taken from you and you say, all right, whatever this is, what can I find? What can I truly be genuinely grateful for?
Hmm.
And a lot of people bullshit gratitude. They write down things that they're grateful for, or they act like it's a Christmas list because I'm happy that I have this and I have that and I'm so grateful.
Hmm.
It's like, no, those people aren't grateful. They're they're practicing gratitude insincerely, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Gratitude is when you can be grateful for something happening for you that does not benefit you. So for me, the gratitude I found was that we were getting ready to go to Afghanistan and I'd just been given a team. So they kept pushing back our deployment. And I
Hmm.
believed that this injury would have happened no matter where I was in the world, whether I was in Afghanistan, Germany, United States, whatever. So if
Hmm.
we'd have been outside the wire, under
Oh.
fire, right? For every one man that's injured, it takes 2 to pull him to safety. So some of my guys could have been killed, another team, a Chinook, everything. And man, at that moment, for the first time in my life, I had genuine, no bullshit gratitude, 360 gratitude.
Hmm.
And once I had that, I became grateful for the people that were nice enough to take care of me because I wasn't a nice person then because I was pretty pissed off.
Of course you were. That's valid though, no?
Yeah, absolutely. And then once I did that, I was grateful for the room that I may never leave, the bed I may never be able to get out of. And about 2 weeks after that, I started getting feeling back in my left hand.
Did they have an explanation as to why that feeling began?
No, they didn't. There were some people that said they must have misdiagnosed me. Other people that was like, well, there are these transient things that come and go.
Yeah.
And this is what got me. I believed it, and then I lost that gratitude again. I went back to that arrogance. I can't wait till I get out. I can't wait till my life does this. And I actually started to regress once I stopped losing genuine gratitude. I went back to square one.
Ooh,
So
that's
I went,
really interesting to me.
yeah, it's crazy.
Ooh, the power of the mind is a trippy thing when we talk about what gratitude can bring and the true essence of being grateful for your breath or waking up that day, all the way down to not just saying, I want something. I want to ask you a question about that, if that's okay.
Of course.
When you were going through this process, was the gratitude practice ever taught to you? Was it ever given a tool to you? Is this something you read about? How did you really lean into that? Because gratitude can often, be misconstrued as prayer. And so whether you are praying or you have gratitude, did you come from a religious background? Was this something that was a learned behavior?
So I came from a religious background, but I wouldn't say I'm religious, or I wasn't say I was religious even back then.
Okay.
I'd read about I'd done what everybody else does. I'd read a book, heard about it. Oh, great! I've read about this, so I know it. No, you don't. Unless you're practicing it with 100% of your soul, you're not really practicing it. You're giving 99% at best. So for me,
Right.
because I was like, adversity is beautiful because it strips away all the bullshit, all the things that you think you are, all the facades, all the lies you tell other people, all the lies you tell yourself. And once you're at that place where you have nothing, now you have to look like unapologetically at every part of your life. So I look back, it's like in my mind, this felt like, well, if this is karma and I did something wrong, what did I do? So I unpacked every hardship, every trespass, anything I could think of from my childhood all the way up until my current adversity to see what I did wrong. And I wasn't perfect. I'm a human being, but there was nothing that I did that was so heinous to justify it. So I started realizing, listen, this is a confirmation bias. This is me thinking that I'm guilty. Therefore, I'm pulling this in. It doesn't make any sense to me. So the more I leaned back, the more I stepped away from it and detached and just looked at it rationally, the more I was like, this probably isn't going to get better. I'm going to accept that. If I have to live like this, what can I do to have agency in my life to take that sort of ownership back? So for me, gratitude is a practice. The opposite of anger is love, but love has to be given to you oftentimes from some outside person or source.
Right.
With gratitude, you can deploy it right fucking now. And most people don't deploy it when they need it the most, which is when they're facing adversity. So for people that are asking about a gratitude practice, I would say, I tell people, when you're brushing your teeth at night, think about that thing earlier in the day that pissed you off. Because lots of times that gives us enough distance where we're detached from it. And now ask yourself, how can I be grateful? What is that teaching me? What's the lesson? And sometimes the biggest lesson from adversity is to stop putting yourself in the same position to have to deal with it over and over again.
Well, it's that learning. That's the whole point of learning, right? At some point, the world is going to keep giving you the same response if you're not showing up differently. And we see that with so many plant medicine clients. We see that with so many of our other clients where they say, I don't know why this keeps happening, or I don't know why I keep meeting the same people. I don't know why. And I say, you know why. It's you're not reacting or responding differently. It's like they cannot believe that the universe would keep throwing the same situation at them. They're throwing it at you because as the situation keeps presenting itself, you're not responding and showing vibrationally, emotionally, mentally that you have not changed or shifted or learned from the last time we showed it to you. So now we're showing it to you and we are asking of you, respond different. And until you do, you're going to get a similar situation in a different environment.
There are only two ways to deal with adversity: correctly and again.
Love that. I love that.
So ask yourself,
correctly
do I want to
again.
keep doing this? Yeah. Do I want to keep doing this? Am I still doing this? And again, step back, like look from this place of no-mindedness. In Zen and the samurais, they would call it no-mindedness. Step back, detach, look from an unbiased perspective and just say, what's really happening right now? And when we can do that, it helps us have a more clear understanding.
When you're working with clients and you see this type of behavior, is this something that you find? And brought to you by Ketone IQ. If you guys have not heard or seen me drinking these little bottles right here, you have been missing out. These guys right here are single-handedly the biggest part of my routine. Outside of the functional mushrooms, the movement, the sleep, the hydration, Ketone IQ is a number one most important tool that I use in my toolbox. And let me tell you why. If you guys have never experienced runner's high, give this a try. That flow state, it is for real. Ketones are a uniquely powerful macronutrient that can cross the blood-brain barrier, and they increase the brain energy efficiency. And every time you take a Ketone IQ, you're going to notice the radical boost in performance, endurance, and just focus in general. For me, I use this when I road bike, when I run. As a mother, instead of using caffeine after 12 o'clock, I go and grab a ketone. More importantly, I use it before I podcast, before I do keynotes or anything important in my life. You will see a ketone in my bag, on the table, or anywhere near me. So do yourself a favor. Once you're done listening to this awesome episode of the Kelsey Sharon Perspective, go on over to the website partner.ketone.com/Kelsey. You're going to save, go grab yourself a subscription so you never miss out and you always have the energy you need. Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Good Living. I am so excited to tell you about something that's become such a meaningful part of my wellness routine, Good Living. Now, this isn't any brand. This is actually a brand I know all of the owners behind. And let me tell you, their integrity, their dedication, and their quality is the real deal. Their microdosing and functional blends are crafted with intention, and you can feel it. Everything is tested and made to support you in tapping into your own rhythm. We're talking about blends for anxiety, depression and stress, ADHD, brain health, inflammation, sleep, and energy. Seriously, they have thought of everything possible. I know firsthand how much love they pour into every single product. So if you're ready to check them out and explore more, go to itsgoodliving.com. And trust me, it's a journey worth taking. That's itsgoodliving.com, itsgoodlivin.com. And make sure to use the code BRASS and get 20% off your first order today. And brought to you by XXXY Athletics. You guys can check them out at xx-xyathletics.com and make sure you use the code Kelsey20. That will help you save. I'm so excited to be a new ambassador of XXXY. I absolutely love what they stand for, and I'm proud to work with them because they are founded on truth, dedication to quality, and they are built for style and performance. Women deserve the opportunities that sports and single-sex spaces provide because sex matters at the end of the day. It is the single biggest determinant of athletic performance, and it's completely unfair and dangerous, as most of you know, to allow males who are XY chromosome to compete with girls and women who are XX in sports. You guys can share your stories just by doing the hashtag workout speak out. Tag myself, Kelsey_Sharon, and the XX_XY athletics on Instagram, and we will share everything. We need to get fit and speak our minds, mobilize into a force that fights back for women's sports. So start fighting. The way that you do that is go to XX-XY Athletics, go use the code Kelsey20 at checkout, slap on that gear, signal to the world that you are done allowing others to walk into female spaces. I believe in this brand. I believe in the mission. I believe in what they do. So go grab some now. It takes a longer period of time to kick into gear because a lot of people struggle with waiting for a result. A lot of people just want to do a minimal amount of work to get them there. And it feels like that if you can show them a spark, it's almost enough to get them to buy into themselves fully and truly participate.
That is the beginning. Most of the clients that I have, the stakes are very high, like your clients. So when they see that there's even an inkling of this that can have some sort of ROI for them.
Yeah.
And when you ask the right questions and you walk them down to where it makes sense to them, Again, do you want to do this again? Do you see this pattern anywhere else in your life? Is this responding? Is this affecting your finances, your spirituality, your relationships, your health, your physicality? What is it doing? I ask them, what more has to happen before you execute?
Right.
What more has to happen before you learn this lesson? Do you have to lose your freedom, your mind, your will, your money, your relationships? What is it going to cost you? Because it will continue to do that. And every time adversity, we try to push it away, right? We try to push next to it so that we can walk around it. But when we do that, if we think about it, our life literally revolves around this one thing that we don't have the guts to face. And if we push it to the side once, when it comes back again, it's built up a hell of a lot of gravity. So remember, you're not pushing adversity. It's now pulling you.
Yes.
And it controls your life. So once I get them to connect how this is controlling their life, because these people want control, these people are leading people, these people have huge companies, then they start saying, you know what? Yeah, I have to do something different. And then you start small. That's my experience.
I find, and I don't know what you see with your clients, I find a lot of individuals, they are constantly looking for external places to put their energy, but they're unwilling to admit that their energy is going in the wrong spot and where your energy goes, right? So I'll give you an example. I've had some clients before who are athletes, and I'll be like, hey, you know, this, they're like, oh, but you know, I hired you because I want to talk about this to do with the game, or I want to talk about this to do with my pre-workup. And I'm like, well, when I look on your Instagram, I see you liking every other female's photo. I see you constantly engaged in behavior where I know you're putting in a significant amount of energy and time. So let me ask you this, is this doing this something for you? Are you looking, what are you searching for? And more often than not, the fact that somebody's willing to call them out on a behavior, any behavior that you see to be negative or draining or putting in a direction that you are not attempting to go to, it almost, at least I've gotten a positive response where they're shocked that somebody will call them out on it. But then they respond going, I knew I was doing it, but I didn't realize how much it was taking from what I'm trying to achieve.
And that's the power of having a coach, right? Our job is to point out the bullshit that they don't see or call them on their bullshit. And most people, like you said, an athlete, a leader, many times they have an entire group of yes men around them.
Yes.
Hey, you're doing great. Or especially athletes, right? They have this trainer that does this. They have the massage therapist that does this. They have a nutritionist who gives them this. They have this strength coach that does this. They have this head coach, this like specific coach. But at the end of the day, it comes down to them. So if you make them sit down and itemize what they're doing, like you said, you're spending 4 hours on IG or TikTok. It's like, we have to ask them, is this behavior, everything we do either moves you closer to your goal or further away? There is no fucking in between. And if it is not moving you closer, then vicariously you are falling back. So if they want to be the best leader, the best athlete, the best performer on that day, then they have to know that they did everything required to get there. So nothing breeds confidence like preparation. And if they know before that ball is snapped or whatever it is, that they did everything in their power to recover, nutrition, sleep, attention, intention, then yeah, they know that when they're out there, Customato said that when two boxers go into the ring, fate can only choose one winner. And she will only choose the one that she knows did the fucking work. You can't lie to her. You can't bullshit her. She's not going to fall for that. She's seen it all. So unless you're doing the work hard and being very honest about what you're doing, more importantly, what you're not doing, I ask my clients 2 questions. What are you not doing that you should be doing? And most drivers already have that figured out. Then I ask them, what are you still doing that you should not? And that's exactly what you're talking about.
I've seen a lot of with teams. It's interesting. I'll see with teams, they bring into a sports psychologist, and the sports psychologist has given, I've seen some very fascinating stuff where I go, are we in high school? I'm not, listen, I'm never going to say who it is. I'm never going to say the team, but I'll tell you one of the experiences I went through this year. I think you'll find this fascinating. Working with this athlete, this team, he gives me a picture. He sends me a picture. It's a paper that's put in the locker, okay? And in the locker, it is a pamphlet, a single piece of paper that looks like it was written for a high schooler that states that if I'm having a hard time with a teammate, I'm going to approach that teammate with kindness. If I'm having a hard time with my coach, I'm going to look at myself and go, what can I do better? How can I move differently? And I'm thinking to myself, these are grown ass men who run into walls for a living. Do you think that asking them, how could I have done better, on a piece of paper is going to help you? And it blew my mind, because what I realized in that moment was these kids are being handled with kids' gloves. These grown ass men who put pads on and run into walls for a living were being treated like high schoolers. And then I wonder why their egos are out of control. I wonder why they're drinking before games. I wonder why their behavior is what it is. When we treat people, or we treat them as if they don't have the balls to handle a hard conversation about, hey, maybe what you're doing is directly not only affecting you, but affecting your entire team subconsciously, because the energy you walk into the room with is a direct result of drinking the whole night before. Your vibration is low. You don't have enough. You're snappier at practice. You respond to your teammates like an asshole, and you talk down to them as if you think you're better. Do you think that person is going to want to protect you? Do you think that person's going to go the extra mile to make that play? What do you think happens when you act that way? And I find it so fascinating, the response when the athlete responds to me with, no, you're right. It's like they sometimes, I mean, this is not every team, but sometimes I see this where I'm like, what are you paying this person? And what the hell are they doing for you? Because that athlete didn't even know how to breathe properly on how to recover. And he's been on your team how many years? That athlete has had a concussion for 3 weeks straight, yet you keep putting him on the field. Where are we when it comes to our athletes and our CEOs? Why is nobody saying the hard thing to them? And I'll tell you why. And I know you know why. Because how dare you talk to me that way? Listen, boy. Listen. You run into walls. I used to run into doors. We ain't the same. We're not going to have the same response, but I'll tell you exactly like you learned. When you act a fool, guess what happens? Other people around you get hurt. The only difference is you need to be grateful that they aren't dying. So how about we show up different? Yeah?
That's it.
When you work with your people, what is the approach you take? Because you're a very soft-spoken individual. I mean, I've been on your show. I've listened to your show for a long time. You hold space very well, but you're very calm. So how do you work with people that need to be this a little bit sometimes?
So that's where the skill is, right? There's a lot of people that respond to the knife hand. They respond to the aggressiveness. They respond to the elevation. But eventually there's a point when they don't.
Right.
So if that's all I got, I'm not very good. If all I have is the calmness, if all I can do is detach and observe and see what's really happening, and I'm the only sane person in the asylum, and I can't bring that to their attention, or I can't light a fire under their ass. So
Right.
again, for me, what I have found, especially with athletes, like if you're talking to CEOs, business owners, leaders, they have quarters, like a quarter of a year to make things happen. Professional athletes, a football player's quarter is 15 minutes.
Right.
So when you're coaching that athlete, you don't have time to build a story. You don't have time to spend 20 minutes to explain to them and walk them down the garden path. You have to find what the issue is. You have to explain to them that you know what the issue is. You have to call them on that. And once they recognize it, now we take action. It needs to be a direct coaching. It needs to also be one thing.
Right.
Because if they're doing 5 things wrong, they're going to be overwhelmed. They're like, well, shit, I can't do anything. What do they do? What are the 5 things Marcus told me? It's too late.
Right.
It's already happened.
Right.
So the one thing is like, what is the 80-20, right? If I see them doing 5 things wrong, but there's one thing they can do right now that can change it, or at least give them a fighting chance. And lots of times it's in the head. It's like, stop fucking hesitating, be aggressive. That's all they need. Right? Stop waiting, initiate. That's all they need. I want you to be default aggressive. I want you to go forward on this thing. I want you to trust your instincts, because if you're on this field, you have done all the training, all the conditioning. You know what your skill set is. So if you have to pull your weapon, I know that you're going to know when to fire. If you're on the field and you see the ball, go get it. Don't hesitate. Stop waiting for permission. Start fucking taking action. And that's usually all you need. And they go out there and they do it. And now they have direction. They don't have to know everything else. With CEOs and other people or their teams, again, we have to show them, how does this apply to you? How are you responding in this? Are you the person that's encouraging the behavior? Are you complicit in allowing this to happen? Are you afraid to speak up? Are you hearing what this person's saying? More importantly, can you read between lines to see what they're not saying, what they're afraid to say? Right? And then everybody in the room is there. And now all of a sudden, I do exercises with the companies where I'll actually have them, like the C-suite executives, come together. I start asking them hard questions. I make them hold space for each other. They have to shut their fucking mouth. They have to do the mouth choke. And they have to listen to this person. And their job is just to listen. Pragmatic empathy, right here in the present. Listen to what they're saying. Don't solve the problem. Don't tell them what they're doing wrong. Just hold the space and listen. And when they do that for about 2 minutes, they start realizing, wow, I was going to jump in right there, but because I shut my mouth, I let this person continue to speak. All of a sudden, they told me the thing I was going to ask them a question about. And what has that done? That's allowed that person to build trust, respect, pragmatic empathy in real time. And then I reverse it. And now this person gets to speak. And if I do it correctly, it's going to encourage you to want to give me even more attention, respect, listen. And then I just continue to click it up. And we go hard for about half an hour because that's all they can take. But at the end of that, every team, every big team, every company, they're all closer. And at the end of the day, all I have to do is say, apply pragmatic empathy in this place right now. Why is this person bent? Why is this person livid? Can you put yourself in their place? Not in a way like, oh, let's come together and kumbaya and hug it out. More of this idea of, if I've given this person a very direct command unnecessarily, and I can see that they're not really receiving it well, whose fault is that? That's my fault, because I get to control how I put it out there, because I'm smart enough to have another gear. And if I do that and I understand how they want to be spoken to, or if I respect them enough to at least ask their opinion, now it's a dialogue as opposed to a one-sided idea. Go out there and execute on this. You got it. Yeah, roger that. Go. So it comes this idea where, again, you're giving them the ability to take ownership, and they can lead in a way that allows them to lead, so that I don't have to be the guy that is micromanaging every single person and I have my finger in every pie. Because if I'm trying to scale something or do the job well, or if I'm a head coach, I can't watch every single person. I have to have a defensive coordinator. I have to have an offensive coordinator. I have to have a conditioning coach. I have to have a nutritionist. I have to have people doing all these things for me, because there's too many moving parts.
When you work with these coaches or these athletes or these C-suite guys, it feels like a lot of them have a lack of control in their personal life. So they take an aggressive control in their business life and in their professional life. And so when you're working with them, do you approach that? Or do you have are you bold enough to say, well, this is because of really what I'm seeing here?
It is. And I like to let them connect the dots. If I tell you something, it's not nearly as powerful as if you discover it on your own. So if I just say, hey, that relationship with your wife, yeah, how is that translating over here? And then the C-suite executive component, right? You have a CEO. He's always had like a weird relationship with money. He's always had a friction around it. You know, people that have money are bad. Or, you know, for us to win, we have to get a sales guy that cuts people's heads off. So what are they going to do? They're going to hire a CFO or a sales guy that's like that. And then they have the audacity to be surprised when they're butting heads with them. Like, this guy's asking for too much commission, or these people are doing too much over here, or the CFO is like really cutting me off at it's like, do you not see the correlation? And once you back it out and let them see that, they connect the dots, and all of a sudden they start to understand what needs to be done. And even if they don't, once you bring it to their attention, you cannot unring the bell. Once you've heard it, or once you've seen that truth, it's impossible to not see it again. So once it continues to come up over and over again, and guess what? If it's a big issue, it is going to come up probably in the next 20 minutes. And then you have the choice. How do I want to deal with this, correctly or again? And then we just take it down from that huge thing all the way down to how do you respond to your wife or your kids when you get home. Do you give a shit about how their day was? Do you even care about them? You claim that you're working so hard for these people, 18 hours a day, and then you build up resentment around the fact that they don't listen to you or they don't want to spend time with you. But you claim you're doing it for them. If you were doing it for them, you would be home. You would make time. You would admit that, you know what, maybe I've dropped the ball here. What can we do? And now we start taking steps towards one another, not this idea that I have to keep chasing this, and if these people don't keep up with me, then they fall behind. That's not a winner's mentality. It's short term. You're winning the battle, but you're losing the war. So what do you want? You want to feel good for the next 20 minutes? Or do you want to continue to move forward in a way that makes sense long term? Once they start seeing that, they see that they're shooting themselves in the foot. It makes it easier to connect all the rest of the dots.
It's nice to see too, because I think the majority of people they're so used to yes people, they're so used to yes coaches. And I feel like you probably have heard this. I hear this all the time, but I feel like you've heard this. You're hard on me sometimes, but I need it.
You're hard on them because you care about them. I'm hard on them because I know what they're capable of.
Right.
I see it. You see it. It's like this marble. I see the angel in there. I can get to it. And we have to chip all this other stuff away. But if they're stuck making excuses and they're more concerned about defending their mediocrity than actually changing, then we have to get through that. And again, these are high-level people. So they've paid a lot of money. They have a lot riding on this. So they have skin in the game. If you have a person that's not invested in one way or another, then that person you can't help. And that's your fault as a coach, because you shouldn't be doing that, right? You should allow that person to go. You should allow yourself to elevate as a coach to be worthy of those kind of people. But it doesn't happen overnight, and you can't get it on Instagram. I'm sorry, guys. You got to go fucking earn it.
That's so funny that you say that. I wanted to segue into that, but you did it so naturally. It's almost like you know what you're doing or something. It's this coaching world is so fascinating to me, because there are people who want to do it because they think, oh, I'm a coach now. I'm just going to get hired by everybody. I'm going to get all these clients. I'm going to work with all these teams. I'm going to get all these CEOs. You learn really, really quickly when you jump into this world that it's oversaturated. There's a lot of people who don't know what they're doing. And it's just a way of trying to dump your shit onto other people. And you have to really catch yourself. You have to catch yourself that what are you doing it for? What is your why? Right? That's in anything in life. What is your why? Why do you want to coach people? Why do you want to go into a world where somebody has a problem? Are you trying to solve the problem subconsciously, or are you genuinely showing up and giving their time? So as you've been in this space now for quite some time and you've been working with the level you have, what is your advice to these people? Now, everyone wants to be a coach. Everyone can be a coach, because it's not one of these, you don't need a PhD to be a coach, my friend.
No, all you got to do is change it in your bio, man.
Woo!
And you can also you can also put keynote speaker in there, an international keynote speaker, and best-selling. You can be whoever you want in your bio, but my clientele has been based. It's happened in real life. It's happened in person. So I've been doing this almost 10 years. So it's taken me 10 years to get to this point. But by having a keynote environment, having a TEDx with 10,000 people is great. But the right people find you. They hear you speak. They see you interact. They feel, because they can, online you can fake it. We talked about that, right? But when you're there in person and you're asking them the question, and it's like, do you honestly not know what the problem is? Really? If I put a gun to your head, you wouldn't even know where to start. Then they start going, well, I read, 400 books a year. It's like, no, you skim 400 books a year. You don't know any of these things. And here's what I would tell them. Knowledge that is acquired but unutilized is the equivalent of ignorance. Why are you in such a hurry to forget all this shit that you're reading? Why? So for me, it comes back to asking honest questions, being very real. And again, because we've been through things, I can see it in somebody else. I can see when they're holding back. I can see when they're lying to me or themselves or everybody else in the room, and I can call it out. And then I can find the appropriate time to call them out. Some people, I need to call them out in front of everybody.
They need the ego hit.
They do. Some people, if you do that, they're not going to ever trust you again. So you have to figure out, when do I do this? But again, it's a case-by-case basis. And this is where the mastery, the skill set of a coach comes in. And you can't get that from certifications online, going to a live event. I've learned from some incredible people, but adversity was always been my best teacher
Right.
because it's true. It never fakes. It's always there. And when you see that person dealing with adversity and they don't want to see it, like you said, it's going to keep coming until they do.
Well, the other thing about adversity too that's so interesting is that nobody wants what it takes to develop resiliency. They don't want to actually go through the adversity to develop the resiliency. They don't want to sit in the pain and the suffering, or what a lot of us call the suck, or whatever word you want to put on it. They don't want to experience, but they sure as hell want what comes on the back end of it. I want to be the resilient individual. I want to be the person that can sit in the cold plunge for 5 minutes. I want to be the person that can climb the mountain, but I don't want to fucking start.
You have to be just as willing to embrace the adversity as you are the resilience that comes after that. And again, it is never the other way around. And that's why it's such a hard proposition, because you have to pay 100% for the adversity. And there is no guarantee that you'll get through it. There's no guarantee that you will do it gracefully. As a matter of fact, you will look very, very dumb. You'll fall down a lot. But if you're more concerned about how you look as you go through adversity, you've already lost, because you're worried about what everybody around you is thinking. You shouldn't be worried about that. You should be worried about, what am I thinking? What am I willing to do? Because even when we get over adversity, if we're trying to go to a higher level, there's a higher level of adversity waiting for you. And it's got compounding interest, and it can't wait for you to get there. It's going to punch you in the face. And the minute that you think that you're the exception to the rule, that you're special, that you got this licked,
No,
man, it's
sir.
coming hard. And once it gets you, you have the audacity to be like, well, I didn't see that coming. You did see it coming. You just thought that you were going to get around it. Exactly. You thought you could circumvent it. And man, adversity shows up at the most inappropriate time without apology. It couldn't care less about what you want. It doesn't give a fuck about your feelings. And it does not take no for an answer. That's it. And that's why it's the truth. It is the most powerful method of change in the world. And until you learn to leverage it, you will play a victim for the rest of your life, and you will blame everyone else around you for the very thing that only you can change.
I had a guy recently, I was in the States, and I'm not working with him yet, but he keeps telling me, I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I was like, okay, you just say when, right? Like, I'll make the time, but you got to say when. And he's like, yeah, I want to work on this and this. And I just stood there in front of other people that he is close to. And I looked at him, I said, perfect. When are you going to stop drinking to excess just to disassociate from your life? And oh my God, Marcus, the look on his face, he goes, you're right. You're right. But everyone has acknowledged there's an issue, but nobody wants to say it head on to him, because how dare you speak to me like that in front of people? It's like, I'm not trying to blow you out. I'm trying to show you want to work with me. You want to work with me? Here we go. Why are you drinking like that? And don't tell me you don't know why. Like, that is the most uncomfortable position you can put somebody in. And I think once you put somebody in the uncomfortable position, you're going to see exactly whether you can work with that person or not based on their response.
The way they conduct themselves in the face of adversity, it tells you everything about who they're going to be, the leader, the professional, whoever they are. And lots of times the adversity comes from us. I have to be this person's adversary. I have to be the one that pushes them to see where they're going to go. And again, if I see them shrink down, that's fine. It's not bad to fall back. We all do it. We're human. However, are you coachable? If I'm calling you on 2 or 3 things and you're making excuses the whole time, and then at the end of it, I bluntly say, listen, I don't think we're a good fit. Or when you fire that client, no matter how much money they paid you, and you send them their money back, and now they're like, well, I paid you this money. It's like, I gave it back to you because I don't have time for a person who is not going to do this work. I was given a second chance in my life. I was given the opportunity to walk again. I'll be damned if I'm going to compromise my integrity or live my life on somebody else's term because one person doesn't want to commit, when there are literally hundreds of thousands of people that would give anything to have the opportunity to do that. Period.
Right.
That's how we have to do it. So the minute you stop making excuses is the minute you start taking your life back. But in today's society, we have all these misery devices. We have all these things that keep us busy, that keep us artificially distracted. And I'm old, I'm 52. So I'm grateful that I grew up without the interwebs, right? I grew up without a cell phone attached to my hip. And so now I can step away from that. I remember there was a time before that. There was a time, I know it's hard to believe, we used to have to remember like phone numbers and like dial on rotary phones and know where like how to drive to places. Yeah, it's like, I don't know where this is. But having said that, we can still do a lot of work with what we're doing. And the great thing is, a lot of the stuff that people are teaching now, we talk about their coaches, they're teaching stuff that's like 40 years old.
Right.
And that shows me that they have not actually applied it in real time, or they haven't coached enough people and seen real life data.
Right.
So because they have not, it shows me it's like, well, you're going through these kind of older ideals.
Yeah.
The person that we are most qualified to help is the person that we used to be.
Exactly.
So if we haven't gone through a hardship and we have somebody that's going through it, we can't help them. We can give them a lot of questions and we can try to, but, and it's something organic. It's something that you just connect with, that you just feel. And I don't know how to explain it. I'm sure there's all kinds of science around it. There's all kinds of like energy and frequencies, and our heart chakra extends, 4 feet in front of us, and people can get a vibe off of us. But warriors recognize warriors, like recognizes like, game recognizes game. And if you don't got it and you're trying to tell somebody that you do, a person that understands it, they're going to see through it. They may not call you on it, but honestly, it's not my job to call everybody on everything.
Right.
I'm good at a few things, and I am good at those few things for a few people. But man, for those people, that's who I give it all to. Because if I'm trying to apply it to all these other areas, man, I'm going to lose that energy. I'm going to burn out, or I'm going to miss the opportunity to help the people that really need it. And that's on me.
And that's the intuition piece, right? So we can call it whatever you want, but there's intuitive coaching, and people are like, well, that's really woo woo. It's like, no, I can feel you because I recognize you, because I recognize your behaviors, your patterns, what you're doing, because I did them. I've been there and I know why. That's why I love CEOs, because I am one, and I love athletes because I was one. I love military and transition because I get it. Those are your wheelhouse. It's this people who want to step outside. I can go coach military. I had a guy ask me recently, do you think I can coach veterans? I said, you a veteran? He goes, no. I said, so what makes you qualified, think that you can understand transition? Well, I went to school. Listen, you can understand it from a scientific perspective, but I'm going to tell you right now, when you've got a gun in your mouth at 2 a.m. and you're sitting there and all you can see is the dead friends around you, don't you dare sit there and tell me you know how to walk that person out of that, because your books aren't going to teach you. No different than any other psychologist who has come up to me and said, I've been going to school for this long. I'm a psychologist now. And I worked with people and I didn't realize some of the situations they don't teach you how to handle. You have to walk the walk, learn. You have to sit in front of the people. It's the 10,000 hours. It's the applicable tools. It's the sitting there going, that tool didn't work for you, but this one did. And this is how we pivot, because this is where it went wrong for you. It's showing the gaps. It's not rocket science.
And it's having the courage to offer the experience, right? I can't teach anybody anything, but I can cultivate an environment that allows them to experience it in real time. And that's what they fucking need. Because I can talk it all day, but until they experience it, a lot of what we're talking about is not new, right? Like there's been no new emotion that a human being hasn't experienced. People love, people say, I don't want to sound cliche, but people love cliches. And here's why. A cliche is something that is true, that everybody knows to be true, but they think it doesn't apply to them. But it does. And it never feels like more real. A cliche never feels more real than when it happens to you. And then what happens? Now this has happened to you, and you want to go out and scream to everybody from the top of the mountain, guys, this is what I went through. I don't want you to go through that. Please listen to me. Go around this thing. Do this. Don't do what I did. And it'll fall on deaf ears because it sounds cliche. So that's what we have to do. We have to be willing to stay in the pocket with this person. Like you said, hold space. I can hold space with somebody while they're going through something for a while, because I don't have to say something. I don't have to have an answer. The most valuable thing that I can give them is just being present right now.
Exactly.
Let them have that space. Lots of times they're like, I've never, I feel like I had to fill space with verbiage or whatever it is. It's like a disquiet mind makes a very loud mouth. So when we can allow that piece to be there, we don't have to say something. We don't have to have an answer. We don't have to ask a question. And usually the person will speak it out until they're finished. And you've had this happen, I can imagine many times. The person is talking it out with you, and as they say it, all of a sudden, they have the answer.
Yep. And they just repeat it too, because you can hear it. I had a client right before you, 9 o'clock this morning, no exaggeration, doing the same thing. She was like, said it again. And I sat there and said, She said it again. And I said, And she said it a third time. She goes, fuck, I did it again.
There it is.
And I went, but it's okay, because now you just realize it and we made it conscious. So now that it's conscious, we can fix it, right? So it's not a bad thing to repeat yourself. Keep repeating yourself until you hear it enough times, because you're not always going to receive it from someone else. And Dr. Mike Hart asked that to me when I did a show, and I love it. He goes, so what's like a tool you use? I go, I ask you, do you want to be coached today, or you want me to listen? Does it?
Yeah.
Sometimes we just need to give them the space to go, okay, I got you, go ahead. Right?
That's it. And like you said, especially when we're there in the moment, right?
Mm.
You have CEOs, you have athletes, they're busy. Their whole day is packed. So if they're writing down things, they're like, yeah, I'm going to work on that. I'm like, no, we're going to work on it now.
I know.
And they go, oh, okay. And then you press them. I don't give them time to start thinking about it and getting their own weight or getting their own mind or come up with bullshit. We're here right now. Well, give me a deadline. Give me a metric. Give me something specific. What would that take? How hard would that? No bullshit. What would it take for you to get there? You have a 5-year goal? Great. What's stopping you from getting there in 6 months? And then they go, whoa. Again, now you're forcing the issue. And what is it? We're forcing them in a way that makes them do the work in a very compacted amount of time compared to giving themselves a psychological out or subconsciously holding back and under-indexing on something that they really desperately want. But they have this thing called fear that every human being has. And once they start to see it and they step back from it and they go, yeah, that makes sense. It's like, yeah, so what do we do? What's one small step we can do right now? No bullshit. What does that look like? Great. Guess what? You're going to call me tomorrow after you do it.
Because fear is just, because fear is just false evidence appearing real. And if we can flip their mindset from that to face everything and rise, they can understand that if they just face it, that if you face something head on, most of the time it'll show itself to you of what it really is, not what you thought it was or how you perceived it to be, right? The reality shift happens.
That's it. Every person I've spoken to that's had a huge adversity in their life, and once they finally face it, they look back and they go, 1, that wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Right.
2, there's other areas in my life I'm doing this. And 3, why the fuck didn't I do that sooner? So here's the thing with adversity. The greater the weight to face adversity, the greater the weight of that adversity when you face it. Stop letting it get bigger, because adversity that's avoided is adversity that's compounded, and you're just making your job much harder in the future. So even if you're kicking the can down the road and you think you're getting away with it again short term, you're not. You're just making it a lot harder for you and frankly everybody else around you, because you don't have the balls to look it in the face.
You know what's really funny about that? That applies to America right now. I don't know if you notice this. Oh my God, does it ever?
Oh my God,
you keep kicking the problems down the can for about 4 years, and now all of a sudden you got such an open border and so many people being killed. I mean, we got a real problem there, dude.
It's crazy. It's like bad leadership and incompetence has consequences, whether it be a fire in California, right? I mean, I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. If you're looking at leadership and there is no water in the fire hydrants,
oh man,
I don't know. I don't care who you voted for, and I don't care how high your taxes are, but that is gross incompetence at the highest level. And then if you start,
the firefighter will look more like you. Don't worry.
That's all that matters, right? That's all that matters.
Oh my God.
And even now, we're 72 hours into President Trump taking over. He's, as of this morning, I believe, there's like 500 violent illegals that are here in the country that they've already deported. And this is a national emergency as far as he's concerned. He's sending Marines to deploy Marines that are actually armed, that don't just have M4s without mags. Like, these people are ready to do what needs to be done. Yeah, because we're being invaded. And
you've been invaded for a long time, sweetheart.
We've been invaded
so have people. We.
I know. And that's, I mean, I've seen your guest, Sean Ryan, he's your guy. And I've listened to everything he's been talking about all these infiltrations that we have, like over 1,000, at least in the United States. I'm not sure about Canada. There's over 1,000 that they are able to say this, like, these are like fighters. These are people that are organized, well-trained, sleeper cells that have funding, that are waiting for a target of opportunity and a soft target to execute against.
Well, I don't know if you saw my episode this week with Yasmin Mohammed.
I did.
She was married to the number 2 that planned alongside bin Laden 9/11, and she was forcibly married, but she's, no exaggeration, grew up in the town I'm living in right now. And she So that's insane to me because this was in the 90s, and the amount of sleeper cells that exist in Canada, the amount of cults that exist in Canada. I had another individual on named Mark Vincenti. He was in the Nexium cult. I had him on yesterday, and he was in the Nexium cult. He wrote The Vow on HBO, and he literally came to Canada, to Vancouver, and reported this, and they laughed in his face. So, and then they went after the victim. So it's like, these things are happening in Canada. We have sleeper cells. We have actual extremists in the country, in my province, in my town, and we are consciously aware. And they have Canadian passports because it makes it easy for them to go back and forth to America. So when America's looking just at the southern border, I know you guys have now started to look at the northern border because we have walked them in and given them student visas that do not require them to leave the country after school. Okay.
It's, again, this is that incompetence in leadership. This is about pushing an ideology more than realistic. It's
pushing the problem
even more, like you said, down the road. Even in the United States, if we're funding people or communities to end homelessness, the homeless population increases even more. Why? Because these people are making money off of this. These people, they benefit from the problem. So having Trump come in, and he's coming in hard, I get it. He has to come in hard. Like, we have to fight this. Yeah, we have to come back hard. We have to overcorrect. And if you're an American or a Canadian, if you're a veteran, you understand signals, you understand being prepared. In America, we're still a gun-loving society. So if you're an American that carries a weapon, carry extra ammo. If you're a person that carries a weapon occasionally, carry it more often. If you're a person that's in an environment, keep an eye out. Just keep your eyes open. Have a very large cup of situational awareness when you step out every day.
Yes.
Also, get in shape. I can't tell you how many fat Americans that have amazing weapons. Thousands,
but oh my God.
But they cannot, right? So if you are, or they're out of shape, or they're untrained with it. So they'll open up their gun safe and show you this safe queen that's, $2,500, and they can shoot paper in a clear environment when there's no stress.
Right.
But if you're not in shape and you can't hit you can't use your weapon effectively. If you are not in shape and you don't have the skill set to protect others with your weapon, you are no longer an asset, you're a liability. And you're not carrying a weapon, you're now a holster for somebody else to take your weapon from you.
That's right. That's right. God damn, that's so true. I wish more people understood that you can have all the guns in the world, all the ammunition in the world, but if you cannot move and shoot under stress, you have never had somebody run at you while you pull a weapon, you now become the thing that they will use to harm other people. And it's not because you're not, you've done one training course. I need you to go do some real ones where stress is applied. We need to put pressure where it's real. Otherwise, frankly, you shouldn't have a license to a weapon. I had Dr. Leslie Dobson on. She's the forensic psychologist that exploded on Instagram. God, she's brilliant. I had her on yesterday, and she pulled out her gun. She goes, I carry this every day. I said, you good with that? She goes, oh girl, I'm very good. So I'd like to apply pressure. She goes, I'm good with it. And that's the thing, is if somebody can confidently say, like, I feel good with pressure, then you deserve to have a weapon. But if you don't, you should not, because now you become the thing they'll use. And I think there's some crazy stat that once a weapon is present in a situation like a home invasion, it's like with 70-90%, you become more likely to become the victim of the situation if you can't handle it properly. I know that I can't remember the stat right off my head. I took that years ago in criminology, but there was a stat that once the weapon is present, the potential of someone being killed is going to skyrocket. So if you're going to have the weapon, know how to use it, man.
You have to know how to use it. Like you said, you have to know how to retain it. And if you're listening to us and you're like, okay, these are, people that are pro, guns or whatever. I can't
even own a gun. All I can have is the knife sitting behind me. Like, I can't have guns. This is what I can have. And I can't carry this on my person, right? I can't carry this on my person, but I can have it. I mean, I have others. I have trained monkey blades I carry on my person, but it's because I know how to work a blade, but I only know how to work a blade because it's all that I am legally allowed to have to protect myself in this country.
See, and that's the thing about it. If whatever weapon system you have, obviously be proficient in it. But in the United States, that's the Second Amendment is there to defend the first, right? So that's the idea. And what I have found is exactly what you're saying. Most encounters with a handgun are with one bullet, one round, and it happens between 0 and 6 feet.
Mhm.
So if I have a weapon and I'm not able to use it properly, or if I have a blade and I can't
Right.
put it where it needs to be
Right.
when I need it, then what good is it? It's a paperweight.
Mhm.
So understanding what that is, and for those of you that are like, well, this is about gun toters, no.
No.
This to me is not it's not a sword, it's a shield. I'm protecting
Right.
other people that cannot defend themselves. If there's a
Mhm.
school, if there's some other, because what are these fucking people that are here now that want to hurt Americans and
Oh.
Canadians that are trying to infiltrate? They cannot wait. Just like your guest was talking about, they have something in mind,
Mhm.
organized, in tandem, simultaneous, and it's going to make 9/11 look like a picnic by comparison, because they want to try to find as many soft targets as they can, as many
Mhm.
people that are uneducated, that are unarmed. So
Mhm.
for those of you that aren't sure, ask yourself this: where in the United States have they defunded the police?
Those are the spots.
That's a soft target. Any place that has the highest gun laws, which also has the highest victims and violence, that's where they're going to go. Any place that
Yeah.
has mass disorganization, basically any large liberal municipality,
Area.
is where they're going to go. Now they're going to try to
Mhm.
go other places as well, but they want to get the most bang for their buck, if you will.
Yes.
We also know this is not just going to be a person that comes in, shoot them up. Some person comes aggressively, takes them out. These are going to be people that have suicide vests. These are going to be people that have
Yes.
all kinds of like mobile, like detonation
Vehicle
devices,
born. Yeah.
vehicle
They're going
borne.
to
They're going
use
to be people.
whatever.
That's it. They're going to bring one person in. They're going to detonate that vest. What do Americans do? Well, we create a perimeter and we bring first responders in.
And then we're going to boom you again.
Exactly. We're going to come in
Secondary.
again. Exactly. Or we'll hit you on one side, and now all of your resources come over here. And guess what? We
Yeah.
have an even bigger idea over here. So this is the distraction.
Mhm.
This is the diversion. This is to move everybody over here so that we can get this big side. And guess what?
Mhm.
Americans, especially when it comes to a lot of this stuff, they see it and then they kind of step back and they just kind of look at it. They don't
Mhm.
respond. They don't act.
Like the girl in the subway who caught on fire and no one stopped it. No one tried to put her out. Nobody sat there and tied that guy down until a cop got there. Nobody attempted to save this poor woman's life at all, which tells me that society is completely out of touch. We no longer
Yes.
care about human beings the way that we used to. The empathy is gone. Not me, not my problem, not now.
That's it. There's a cop that walked by her and didn't do anything.
That cop should be immediately fired. I mean, you're not a cop then now, are you?
No.
You're a bystander. You're somebody that's wearing a uniform for pretend. And I don't care if it's because you didn't want to involve yourself or you didn't think you could put her out, but she had a real chance. If somebody would have jumped on top of her, yes, you would have risked your life. But isn't that literally
That's your
as a
job.
police officer you signed up for?
It's in your
Maybe
job
I'm wrong.
Well,
Well, you know
in New
what's
York,
wild
it
is
depends, right?
well, you see cops, right? It's not even cops. You see this in the military. There's a whole trend on TikTok where people come out and say, I joined for the GI Bill. I didn't join because I have some sense of service. And then they get shocked and awe when they end up having to get on a deploy rotation. Well, I didn't sign up for this. Well, yes, you did.
You literally did. It's in
You
the contract,
literally
guys.
did.
Literally did.
Yeah,
Your name's on it.
dude, it's so insane to me to kind of witness. And I can't tell you how much of a sense of relief, and people really despise how I feel about Trump, and they despise, but at the end of the day, I'm a Canadian citizen, and I understand what real true tyranny starts to look like. You guys are just starting to taste it, whereas you have a real stop point, whereas we have been in it for years now, and the erosion of what we don't even have free speech, but the erosion of or even an idea that we had something that looked somewhat like free speech. But I've been speaking from it from an outside perspective, watching. And I got to tell you, the day that man got into power, I actually felt my shoulders removed from my ears. I felt my
Yes.
arms go down in peace. And I realized, you know what? This is the only president in almost 40 years that actually stopped wars and didn't start another one. I don't know why that alone isn't
Yes.
big enough to discuss. You don't have to like the man's demeanor. Most of you don't like my demeanor anyway, or the way I speak, but somehow you still listen. So it's like, you don't have to like who he is, but I'll tell you right now, he didn't get to who he is by being a pussy. He got there because he said, enough is enough. I am who I am, like it or not. I'm going to do what's right, not what you like and what makes you comfortable, but I'm going to do what needs to be done. It's kind of like the dad that came in and said to Biden, who was like the teenager, enough's enough with the Coke in the office. We need to go, you need to go take a time out, and I'm going to
Yeah.
step in and do what needs to be done. So you don't have to like the man. You don't have to like the way he moves. You don't have to like the way he talks about women. But I'll tell you right now, you think for a single second that Biden didn't grab someone by the pussy at some point? You think that Clinton didn't get blowjobs in the office? You think that Bush or somebody else wasn't cheating on his wife with one of the aides? Stop it. You're naive. Grown men who are in positions of power will always take up the power. We know it. Stop pretending it doesn't happen. But what you do need to acknowledge, whether you like it or not, you have a border crisis unlike anything we've ever seen. You guys have an immigration problem that is literally known across the globe because it's so wild to witness. And you guys have an education system and a food system problem that has broken your people. And so that's not to say Canada hasn't. We have as well. The only difference is you guys are bright enough to wake up and say enough is enough.
We're starting to. And that's why we're going. I think that's why he's going so hard right now. He wants to make. He wants to show. It's like, listen, we have to push hard against this thing. The understanding is, if we don't go hard now, we don't know how much harder we can go later. If we go slow right now, it's going to slow us down. This violence of action with this execution of all these things is exactly what we need. And he's showing it again within the first 72 hours. He's like, here's all of these orders I've signed in, all these executive orders.
Yeah.
He didn't pardon his entire family or anything. I'm not going to say that.
Oh my God, in the 11th hour, because why do people need preemptive pardons if they did nothing wrong, right?
I mean, you can pardon me for something, but if I didn't do it, I don't need to take it.
I don't need it.
Interestingly enough, Biden pardoned everybody except for himself. So that could be an interesting caveat later.
Well, you know, it's fascinating. I think it's because he just forgot.
But he's competent enough to be the president. You can't say that.
Right.
How dare you?
But he can grope his Secret Service people at the door, and that's totally normal behavior. I mean,
that's normal. Or sniffing 12-year-old girls on camera. Yeah, irrespective of that.
Listen, that's just Diddy coming out in real time, which is a whole other thing. Speaking of the energy to deal with all of this bullshit, what do you do? I gotta know. What do you do daily? Like, how do you function? Because are you a coffee guy? Or what's your deal?
Coffee guy. This is actually vodka. But no,
perfect.
This is coffee or green tea, but that's my thing. What is yours? I know that you're a big proponent of.
I'm a ketone person, so I drink 1 cup of coffee in the morning, and then I stop at 11 o'clock. No caffeine past that. But I know with like the type of jobs we do, and a lot of people that listen, like, we don't want our clients on caffeine. It's got an 8-hour shelf life, right? So we really want to look at things like ketone. I love these guys right here. If you haven't tried them, I'll get you some. They're out of the States. They worked with DARPA, but they finally have one that doesn't taste like wall paint. They have one that has no caffeine that tastes like peach, and it's good. I know. I'm telling you, these guys make my life go round, and people laugh, but I'm not exaggerating. It's genuinely my favorite thing in the world. So.
And what's the name of it?
They're called Ketone IQ. They're out of California. They did you guys can check it out if you haven't. I've done 2 episodes with the owner, one of the co-founders, Michael Brandt, but they had a $6 million contract with DARPA for national defense. They developed it for special operations at first, and it has skyrocketed and kind of exploded, and it's what I use to function in my life. But we got to get you some of these, because I think you're going to see a game changer towards the end of the day clients at the 4 p.m. ones, where you got nothing left, this guy helps get you there. So I think it's a huge additive in my life, my friend.
I'll check them out.
Please do. I want to understand how people support you, find you, and get copies of your book, how they could work with you too, or even hire you for a keynote, because I think that whether you're doing your individual keynotes or you're working with the C-suite group, or you're brought in, I think that you add an immense amount of value to companies. So how do people hire you?
Oh, thank you. They can get the book on Amazon, The Gift of Adversity. I'm finishing the second book, Acta Non Verba, now. Acta Non Verba is also the name of my podcast, which you were nice enough to be an incredible guest on. MarcusAureliusAnderson.com is my website. You can find me, Marcus Aurelius Anderson, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on X. But that's where you can find me. You can go there and inquire about speaking, coaching, whatever it is you need. The goal is to meet you where you are, and social media is a necessary evil, but the goal is to make authentic connections and give the real no bullshit advice, and then to keep you on the path to make it a reality. That's the truth.
Dude, I love it. It's always so fun having you. We'll have you back in the summer once your next book's ready to go, whether you're ready to go then or not. We'd still love to have you back on and have these conversations. I think so many people are going to learn a lot from this episode, whether they're uncomfortable with it or not. There is always something to be learned with everybody we have a conversation with, whether it's your story of resilience or hiring you as a coach, which I do highly recommend other people do. Investing in yourself is something that you will never, ever regret. But most importantly, thank you so much for being with us on this episode. You stick with me. Everybody else, go give them a follow. It's all in the show notes. Do yourself a favor. Go grab one of these, and I'll see you all next week.